genetics. G is for genetics. And people get genetics all backwards because genes are not a death sentence. They should be a wake-up call. Yeah. I have heart disease in my family. I have obesity in my family. Really? I have a brother that's 150 pounds overweight. Wow. I have a sister that's the same. And it horrifies me. So when I tested my genome, it said I should be fat, but I'm not. Yeah. Why? Because I know it's a risk, and I'm going to do everything I can to protect myself from the risk. So I have this great scan of Lisa Gibbons. So Lisa's a well-known celebrity whose mother and grandmother died with Alzheimer's disease. Really? And she came to see me when she was 51 because she was stressed and going through some personal stuff. And she lets me tell the story. And her brain looks like she was headed for Alzheimer's disease. Because we can actually see if you're headed for Alzheimer's disease decades before you have any symptoms, whether or not you're headed for the dark place. Okay. Is the back half of your brain is dying. So I would see low activity here, but I would also see this area. It's called the posterior cingulate, and it's visual memory integration. And yours is sort of sleepy. But 6 months later, it's phenomenal. Yes. Yeah. And so what we're doing is preventing it in you. Well, how exciting is that? Absolutely. Because you're not an in-the-moment person where I'm just going to make a decision for now. You are thinking about 5 years from now, about 10 years from now.
I've got a 20-year vision for my life, and it has a healthy brain in it.
And a healthy brain in it. So the impulse to drink or the impulse to have the banana split, it doesn't fit, right? I use those words with my patients all the time. Yeah. So then what? If I do this, then what happens? And does it fit? And does it fit with the goals I have for my life? So genes, and I have some genetic interventions, blueberries, green tea, curcumin, all help and the gene story is so interesting because it's like, oh, I have heart disease in my family. There's nothing I can do.
Everyone thinks it's a death sentence.
And it's complete nonsense because of the thing we learned about 20 years ago called epigenetics, that my habits turn on or off certain genes that make illness more or less likely in my babies and grandbabies. Yeah. And so it's not about you. Yes. It's about generations of you. And in my new book, The End of Mental Illness, I actually dedicated it to my two nieces. They were raised in chaos. They have a huge genetic risk factor for mental illness: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, OCD, depression, addictions, criminal behavior. And they were raised by parents who had domestic violence, depression, drug abuse. They went to multiple schools. And about 3 years ago...
Is this Tanya's family or is this
Tanya's family?
Okay, sorry.
Her half-sister, she was estranged from her half-sister. But when we got a call from CPS that they had taken the children, we knew we must act. Yes. And so we wrapped services around their mother, who was an addict at the time. She just had her 1-year chip. I'm so proud of her.
Congrats.
And we know these girls are loaded for mental illness. And so at the end of mental illness, how do I prevent it in them and their babies and grandbabies? And they're doing phenomenally well. Yes. But you know, they're no longer addicted to hot Cheetos. You know, my first grocery store trip was so painful for them because I said, look, before we go in, I'm just going to tell you, I don't spend money on things that are going to hurt you. And so that was hard for them.
They're like, what does that even mean?
Right? That means is half of what they wanted they didn't get. Yes. But now, and we made the turn about 4 months into this thing when we're at Summer House in Corona Del Mar, and Alize ordered a salmon salad and finished it and liked it. And now, is this good
salad
for my brain or bad for it? Yes. So genes are not a death sentence.
Yes.
I scan them. That's why I loved imaging.
Yeah.
Because you see it and you go,
That's why
oh
I
my
loved
God,
imaging.
this is terrible.
Yes.
I want it better. So you,
Yes.
like me,
Yes.
when I saw my terrible scan, I developed brain envy. You did the same thing.
Yep.
And then you acted on it.
Yes.
And within 6 months, you got benefit. I did the big NFL study, so the H is head
Yep.
trauma.
Yes.
Brain is soft, about the consistency of soft butter. Skull is really hard. Skull has sharp, bony ridges. Head trauma is a major cause of psychiatric illness. And nobody knows about it because most psychiatrists never look at the brain.
Yes.
It's just not part of what they were taught to do, and it's not part of, they go, oh, what is the scan going to tell you? The underlying physiology of the patient in front of you. You're going to really guess at that? Are you insane? And one of the things I learned is 40% of the patients who come to Amen clinics had a significant brain injury.
Interesting.
Before they came to see us. And it's a major cause of homelessness, of suicide, of alcohol abuse, of drug abuse, of depression, of panic attacks. And that's why you and I are sitting here, standing
Exactly.
here talking,
Yeah.
is that head trauma damages people's lives. So when I first started doing imaging, I was so excited. I was a little kid. I mean, it's like my life was meant to do
Yes.
this. I got no end of grief from my colleagues. But like my dad, I'm good at saying bullshit.
Yeah.
And I just kept doing it. But I have two personal flaws that I don't like. Is one, I like being liked. And two is I hate conflict. And so
Interesting.
now I'm being hated by my colleagues,
Yes.
and I'm in a war.
Yeah.
And I was being worn out by it emotionally. And then in April 1995, I got a call from my sister-in-law, Sherry, 10:30 one night, that my 9-year-old nephew, who's also my godson, attacked a little girl on the baseball field that day for no reason. And he hurt her. And I'm horrified. And I'm like, what else is going on with him? And she said, Danny, he's different. He's mean. He doesn't smile anymore. I went into his room today and found 2 pictures he had drawn. One of them, he was hanging from a tree in a suicide. The other one, he was shooting other children.
We're talking a 9-year-old little boy.
9-year-old boy. Who's Columbine?
Yeah.
Or Sandy Hook or Aurora.
Waiting to happen.
Waiting to happen. And now I'd already been scanning people for 4 years. So my first thought is you have to scan them. My next thought is you want to scan everybody.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a
Yes.
family problem.
Yes.
Except I knew his family. His mom and dad are great people. And so they brought him to see me. And I held his hand while he held his teddy bear and got scanned.
Yeah.
And he had a cyst the size of a golf ball occupying the space of his
Talking
temporal
about
lobe.
this morning. God.
And I called his pediatrician. I said, find somebody to take this out. And he called 3 neurologists. All of them said they didn't think the cyst was related to his behavior problem. And they wouldn't operate on him until he had real symptoms. And
Because,
I remember
because the physical attack of the child or writing, suicide notes essentially in color
is
isn't a
not,
sign.
and I'm like, I have a homicidal, suicidal boy.
Yeah.
What do you mean by real symptoms? And
Yeah.
he got anxious because I'm really pissed off.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I think they mean seizures or he loses consciousness. I'm like, you're really going to wait until he has seizures or
Yeah.
losing consciousness? So I hung up. And then I called the neurosurgeon at UCLA, the pediatric neurosurgeon, Jorge Lozera, and he said, Dr. Amen, when kids with cysts are symptomatic, we drain them. He's obviously symptomatic. And I got 2 calls after surgery. One from his mother saying that when Andrew woke up from surgery, he smiled at her. He hadn't smiled for a year. The second call was from Dr. Lazare, who said, oh my God, Dr. Amen, that cyst was so aggressive and it put so much pressure on his brain that it actually thinned the bone over his temporal lobe, that is now eggshell thin. He said if he would have been hit in the head with a ball, would have killed him instantly. Either way, he would have been dead in 6 months. That was the moment. I didn't
Yeah.
care if you liked me anymore.
Yeah.
And now, Andrew, goodness, he's 33, and he's married. He got married last year. I cried through the whole thing. He owns his own home. He's got a job. He's a normal wonderful human. The easy thing when people do bad things is to call them bad. That's easy. The hard thing is to go, why? And we need to create a new paradigm where we look at the brain on a regular basis, and to not do that is insane.
Yes.
Because to think I could just guess at what was wrong with him. Most 999 psychiatrists out of 1,000 child psychiatrists would have put him on meds and put him in therapy.
Yep.
We think of depression as a Prozac deficiency
Exactly.
when it's not. It's a symptom of a troubled brain.